If you're watching this, you probably have an online info business that's refusing to scale. You're putting in the work. You're probably working hundreds of hours a week doing the content, the sales, the client delivery, but not seeing the results you expected when leaving your 9 to 5s. You see all these entrepreneurs living the dream life out here in Dubai and in Bali, working 4 hours a day, then chilling on the beach, eating acai bowls for the rest of the time. And this just wasn't the case for me before. So I became curious. I packed my bags. I came out here to find the answer. They knew something that most didn't. That is leveraged systems. I realized your favorite gurus have been lying to you this entire time. They sell you the most complex methods with fancy names, yet their businesses were so simple. And the sad truth is that simplicity does not sell. Apparently you need to grind, the journey has to be difficult, and only the most genius minds can build that dream online business. But it's all bullshit. So I decided to make this 4-part series to show you the exact profit pillars you need to implement to scale your business to 20 to 30K a month without having to work hundreds of hours a week and knowing exactly where your next clients will come from. So I know a few of you guys would be wondering naturally, who am I to be able to speak on these topics? I'm going to give you a bit of a backstory as to who I am, where I've been, and where I am at the moment. So back in 2020, I was at university, and I'm sure a few of you guys that were watching the news noticed that the world had completely changed. Something called COVID-19 had forced us to isolate and hide in our homes to think. So I did just that. And I thought about exactly what I wanted to do out of life. I wanted to provide for my family and live that life of freedom. And at school, I wasn't the smartest, nor was I the best behaved, but I always knew I wanted to become successful, and COVID had reignited that feeling within me. So at university, I started my first ever business where I drove up and down the country with my friends, speaking with landlords to try to convince them of letting us put their home on Airbnb. And it was a really cool experience. We were able to convince 2 landlords to say yes to us. And this gave me proof that there is a way of making a living that didn't require a boss. But I wasn't totally convinced on this whole entrepreneurial world. So fast forward to 2022. After uni, I joined a sales job because I thought this was the natural next step. Although the job taught me so much, I quickly found out it wasn't going to get me rich enough to provide and live that life of freedom that I'd mentioned. So I left and became so hell-bent on building my own business. The last job did teach me, however, that in order to make money, you need to make someone even more money or save them time. So I began a paid advertising agency, and I bet that sounds great on the surface, but we were really dealing with low profits, low margins, the worst clients who at times refused to pay us commissions, and just a piece of advice, never run a pay and results offer. So I decided to quit the business and fly to Brazil. And after weeks of really enjoying myself, that quickly turned into sulking, and I flirted with the idea of becoming a cog in someone else's machine. However, one day I listened to a podcast from Alex Hormozi where he said something that would go on to change the next 6 months for my life. And it was that his first 9 businesses had completely failed, but the learns from each of them allowed his 10th to succeed. So I grabbed a pen and paper and I wrote down everything that I did good in the business and why, and also everything that I overlooked or struggled with and also why. So here are the 4 biggest learns that I would consider massive pillars now in any business that I ever proceed with in the future. So here are the 4 biggest learns. Profit over revenue every single day of the week. Profit is exactly what you should be optimizing your business for, because revenue just gives you a false reality of how well the business is doing. You need to build the business for maximum profit. And secondly is use leverage as quickly as humanly possible. I always see books and videos saying work on the business, not inside the business. And honestly, I thought it was all bullshit because I never really knew what it meant. Work was just work to me at the time, but I know exactly that the type of work you're doing means a lot. So thirdly is not every voice you hear is worth listening to. And this is a bit of a controversial one, but there's 2 folds to this. There's the internal voice that you need to be smart enough to understand that some of your ideas, your bad ideas especially, and bad thoughts just need to be ignored. I don't really know how much more to expand on this, but just analyze every single thought you have and generally follow your instincts. These will normally lead you to the better decision. And then there comes the external voices. These are the people around you, the doubters, the advice givers, maybe friends or family. And my way around this is choosing 3 or 4 people, both online or mentors, and only listen to them when it comes to business, and then ignore everyone else. Of course, there will be a few exceptions to this rule. However, just smile and wave to everyone else and just ignore them. They're probably talking a lot of shit. Building a brand is probably the single most important thing in today's online economy, but not just any brand where you're doing TikTok dances or funny pranks. You need one that actually is built for converting this attention into sales. One that the audience can completely trust because of the amount of value you're giving to them away for free. Influencers are no longer the ones who are the richest anymore. Funny enough, I live in Bali and I meet people with thousands of followers every single day, but are dead broke, which brings me perfectly to today's video. So in order to understand what phase we are in today, I need to kind of give you a bit of a backstory as to the different phases that we've been through in what people call the creator economy. So phase 1, all you really had to do is something out of the ordinary that the public hadn't seen in order to gain that attention. Think Kim Kardashian. Where the attention goes, money flows, and this still rings very true today. However, there was a lot less competition back then, so you saw a lot of celebrities shoot into stardom really, really easy. Then we began to see the rise of self-made influencers who just post on social media really consistently. Let's think around the 2010 era where Facebook, Instagram, Vine, all these platforms started to become really popular. And you didn't have to do the absurd things in order to get their attention. So phase 3, this is the phase we are currently in. Requires you to build so much trust with your audience, and you need to become a relatable creator, yet be able to showcase the dream life that they hope to one day achieve. Then we started to see a rise of micro influencers who began entering the market with a few thousand followers, promising the world with crazy guarantees. And how do you kind of separate yourself away from this? But I need you to understand there is a beauty to this phase, and that is that you no longer need massive audiences to make some money online in today's economy. So here's a quick example that I used where someone with 3.5 million followers only makes 10K a month. I don't know about you, but 10K a month in today's economy just doesn't really cut it, especially if you're putting in so much work to create that content. Then you obviously need to see more output on the back end. So why does 3.5 million followers make only 10K? It's because they're doing TikTok dances and they're showing no value in their content, and they attract binge watchers. These are not people that end up purchasing your info product. Whereas if someone with 10K followers, they're making 100K a month. And the reason for this is that their audience is completely primed for their pain points, where 50 to 70% of them are feeling the exact pain points that you're talking about in your content, and therefore building enormous trust with your audience. So how do you go about building this magical 30K a month info business without needing to build that massive following? So the short answer is building and implementing a trust-based ecosystem on the front end of your business. The dream outcome is a few quality targeted followers that are pre-sold on your info service before they ever jump on a sales call with you. Here's a quick example of a conversation I had with a client. He was just giving me an update of how business was going at that particular time and what his pain points when we first started to work together. And what he said was getting on calls with leads that didn't understand what we were doing. That was probably the most frustrating part of his business. And I totally get it. He was running what I call a sales-based marketing system or conversion system. But I'm going to go into that in a little bit. So he was spending 4 to 5 hours a day on calls with clients that, again, didn't know exactly what he meant. So it sounds like a really productive day. However, as the business owner, you're not really seeing profit on the back end of jumping on calls with clients that say, can I think about it? Or my dog is ill. Just giving you every objection under the sun. So how do we avoid this? Our theory is 70% of the conversion needs to happen before the prospect ever jumps onto a call with you. To understand this, or how to do this and convert pre-call, I want you first to understand the 2 different types of conversion systems. So here we have a sales-based conversion system. So the example I gave here is an ad funnel that you would generally see with this type of conversion system, where the prospect will see the ad is a 60-second ad to make them aware of what you do. Then if they show interest, they will likely jump onto a call. Then from the call, they jump into the consideration stage, where you will need to explain how everything works, how your info service will potentially help them. Then if everything goes well, you'll be able to convert them into a client. However, the problem with this is convincing someone to pay you after just explaining to them how it works and what the service actually is one of the hardest things. So to avoid these objections of I need to think about it, or where they're shocked at the price when you tell them and needing to speak to their wife, their dog's ill, every objection I'm sure you must have heard, you need to move away from this sales-based conversion system. And the reason why it doesn't work is they simply don't trust you enough to hand over thousands of their hard-earned money. So what we implement into our clients' businesses is what we call a marketing-based conversion system. This is a trust-building ecosystem, or a flywheel, depends how you want to call it, where an ad or Instagram organic brings in the attention that you require to get some eyeballs on your service. Then from Instagram, you can send them into YouTube. I'm going to go into YouTube in a lot more detail in a second, but it should play a massive part in your client acquisition process. Then from YouTube, you can send them to a community like an email newsletter, a school community, a Discord, anything that you own. Then from that, you can send them into a sales call to try convert them. And the beauty about this system is that at every single stage, you can book them onto a call to convert them. So % of the marketing needs to happen before they ever jump on a call. So you don't want to be like my last client, where they were frustrated of jumping on so many calls where the client didn't know exactly what they're doing. So Facebook ads brings in the attention, then the content handles all the objections and nurtures them. Again, organic content that's primed for attention. It doesn't have to be ads, but it has to be made in a way that ideal target audience that you want to target needs to be spoken to on every single piece of content that you make. I mentioned I was going to go into YouTube in a lot more detail, and it needs to play a significant part in your client acquisition process. And the reason for this is I've given 3 reasons. So Google made a study a few years ago where they said for someone to become a customer, they must have 7 hours of engagement with your brand across 11 different touch points in 4 different locations. And YouTube hits every single one of these notes, because if you were to release 11 videos that averaged around a time of 30 minutes, that means you're spending 5 hours and 30 minutes with your prospects before they ever jump onto a call with you. And these 11 touch points can be a lot of things. It can be 11 videos. It can be maybe 10 different short films that you've released. And it can be maybe 10 more emails that they've seen. And now you're over delivering on this Google study to ensure that you're converting extremely easily on every single call and not wasting your time on sales calls that just won't convert. Then there's evergreen content. YouTube is just not like Instagram. It's a search engine. Therefore, keywords in the title allow for it to be shown for years and years and years. Therefore, if you do it once, you can be shown to thousands of people over and over and over again. This is the pure definition of leverage. And then finally, there's this idea that I really want you to understand, is that you might get 100 leads. This is just an example, but the industry standard is that 50% of these leads will never buy. They're broke, they're binge watchers, they're unqualified, they're not your ICP, and that's totally okay. Then there's 15% who will buy almost immediately. So they really, really need your product, your info service. And don't get me wrong, this 15% is great, it's an important part of your business, but this is not what's going to allow you to live that life of freedom. It's that 35% who just require some nurturing. Here's this little graph that I made where a new lead would come in. Yes, you might get a few sales after the first 30, 60 days. Your job as a business owner is to be there when they're ready to buy. Your content will allow you to do this in the most leveraged way. And this is exactly the difference between a sales-based funnel and a trust-building marketing ecosystem. Again, don't be afraid to ask, but make sure you're offering something first. Then they're going to reciprocate that favor and hopefully join your info service. So what is the trust building framework that converts audiences? So I've broken up into 3 parts. There's the awareness stage where you need to make your audience aware of the problem that they're actually facing. Your prospects probably have so many problems and have gurus telling them to do this and do that, but you need to align their thoughts. You need to make them understand that this is the exact problem that they're facing. Then you can shift their belief. Your content needs to make them agree that your solution is the right way and remove every single other problem or solution that they hear on the internet. And the goal is not just explaining to them how, but also why their way is so much better. And the beauty about this is that when you shift their belief, they're way more emotional now, therefore a lot more prone to buy off you. Then there's the assets. You need to build a library of assets you can give away to help your audience close the gap between their current situation and where they want to go. So this can be lead magnets, it can be YouTube videos that answers pain points and handles a lot of objections before you ever jump on a call with them. Or it can be case studies so that they can trust that you're able to actually do what you're saying you're doing. And remember, don't just educate, show exactly why they should make this change. So the key ideas to take away from today's video is that you need to maximize the chance for your audience to spend time with you. So someone recently told me an analogy that really hit home, where if there was two people that had the same products that they were trying to pitch to you, and you obviously required this product, but one person had 60 seconds to pitch to you and the other person had 30 minutes. Of course, you're going to be way more inclined to purchase of the person that pitched you for 30 minutes because they've been able to share with you the pain points, they've been able to nurture you and tell you why their product is the best on the market. So I advise you to spend as much time with your prospects before ever jumping on a call with them. Then there's building trust by offering something first, and not just anything. It's something that's valuable to their journey from their current situation to their desired outcomes. So the fourth one is use a marketing-based acquisition system. No one likes to be sold to. It's annoying, no one really likes it. So build a system that invites people to come to you and give you the money and tell you their pain points and problems. And then last one is identify the gap. So what is the problems that your prospects are facing and where do they want to potentially be once they achieve all their goals? Make content that talks to this gap, the problems, the solutions, and be able to close the gap with a lot of assets that you can provide to the market. Then the last one is, last but not least, is make YouTube today and start posting. It really doesn't have to be difficult. Just make simple edits and watch your revenue and your profits grow significantly. So if you found this content useful, make sure to tune into my Instagram. I'm going to be sharing a lot more content on there. And also make sure you're tuned into YouTube for future episodes in this 4-part series. But thank you so much, and I hope you took so much away from this video.